So many of you might be wondering, what is an autistic meltdown? We use the word meltdown a lot to describe all different kinds of loss of control. For example, a young child having a temper tantrum, or any kind of loss of control in an adult. I want to talk about autistic meltdowns, which are specific events which happen to autistic people of any age. They are an intense response to overwhelming circumstances, causing a complete loss of behavioural control. I'm often asked, what's the difference between a tantrum and a meltdown? So let's start there. An autistic meltdown is bigger, more emotional, longer lasting, and more difficult to manage than the average tantrum. An autistic meltdown doesn't have a purpose. Tantrums tend to be manipulative. A child learns that they can get their own way by crying, lying on the floor, and lashing out. This behaviour is then repeated when they want to get their own way, particularly if it has worked in the past. Autistic meltdowns are not manipulative. There is no goal. It is an intense sign of distress. Tip: you can sometimes tell the difference by watching the behaviour. In a tantrum, you would see signs of the child looking to see what reaction they're getting from their behaviour and trying to negotiate to get their own way. The tantrum would end with them either getting their own way or realising that it's not going to help them to get their own way. In a meltdown, the person will have no control over what they are doing, and they may look panicked or frightened. They may shut down or try to escape. They will lose their ability to problem solve or negotiate. The meltdown won't necessarily end when the trigger problem is resolved. Next, I want to talk about what causes autistic meltdowns. Meltdowns are caused by high levels of stress. They can be the result of sensory overload, an overwhelming situation, information overload, unexpected changes, or other challenges that that person is dealing with, causing them to feel overwhelmed. In my experience, meltdowns are not the result of one single thing. They are usually triggered by a final straw after a series of challenges. To give you an example, I recently had a meltdown which looked like this. First, I was on holiday for the weekend, dealing with schedule changes, unusual activities, and extra socialising. Next, I had been unwell the night before, so I was feeling tired and in pain and just generally a bit wobbly. I decided that the way to fix all this was to get a particular drink from a particular cafe. When we got to the planned cafe, it was shut. So, we went to a different cafe, and Mr. Purple went to get us some drinks. But when he came back, he hadn't gotten me the drink that I had asked for. I had a meltdown. On the surface, it looked like I had a meltdown over a frappuccino. But if you look more closely, I was in sensory overload and feeling physically unwell. The frappuccino was just the final trigger. So, what does an autistic meltdown look like? Typically, but not always, you will see pre-meltdown signs of distress. This is a warning signal. This can look like increasing irritability and sensory distress like hands over ears, increasing volume of voice, or restlessness. These warning signals could also include stimming, rocking, pacing, nail biting, and more. Just as autistic people are different, so their meltdowns are different. Not all meltdowns look the same. They might involve lying on the floor, hiding, running away, crying, shouting, swearing, throwing things, hitting themselves, or lashing out. Side note, I once threw an entire fruit bowl's worth of apples at a wall when I was in meltdown. Awkward. My meltdowns usually start with an increase in irritability and circular thinking. That means saying the same things over and over again. When I melt down, I usually cry and sit down or lie on the floor. I may appear angry and irrational, and I might shout. As I said, I have also been known to throw things. Like autistic people, autistic meltdowns will vary from person to person. Now you're probably asking, how do I prevent meltdowns? So I'm going to break that into two parts: short-term and long-term meltdown prevention. Long-term meltdown prevention is about living a life that day in, day out suits our neurology. This could include things like meeting our sensory needs, avoiding sensory overload, learning to recognise and manage our emotions, routines, time spent doing our special interests, appropriate support built into our lives, making and managing boundaries, energy accounting, and more. I've made videos on many of these topics, and I'll leave a link to anything relevant in the description box. Next is short-term meltdown prevention. So what can I do to prevent a meltdown when I see warning signs that one might be about to happen? First of all, to say there is a short window of time from when you receive your meltdown warning signs to having the meltdown where you could possibly do anything to prevent that meltdown. So if you try and don't succeed and the meltdown happens anyway, don't feel bad about it. It's not your fault. But these suggestions might help. Walk away. Get away from anything which is triggering you at this time. Find a quiet, low stimulation space to relax in. Do not try to fix whatever it is that is stressing you out. Close your eyes. Simply closing your eyes can reduce sensory input and help you to regulate. Get to know your meltdown warning signals, and this can help you to implement the following strategies. Use any stims or sensory products that you might find helpful for regulating. This might include stimming, rocking, weighted blankets, flapping, hidey holes, and stroking your pets. Take some deep breaths. Sometimes I find it helpful to breathe in for 4 and breathe out for 4 and concentrate on nothing but my breathing and my counting. Wait until you feel calmer and more regulated before trying to do anything else. Keep the rest of the day low pressure if possible. And finally, what to do if you have a meltdown anyway. For those of you who are supporting an autistic person, here are my top 4 things to do to help an autistic person in meltdown. Number 1, clear the room. Help the autistic person to be somewhere alone and safe. Number 2, stop talking. This person's brain cannot handle any more input, and even supportive words can make this worse. Number 3, don't touch us. Again, this is more information for our overloaded senses to process and will make things worse. And number 4, be there ready to support and reassure when the meltdown is over. And for autistic people, here are my top 4 things to do when the meltdown is over. Number 1, don't beat yourself up. You didn't choose or cause the meltdown, and you are okay. Number 2, care for yourself very gently. Do what you need to do to feel okay. Number 3, get rest and avoid stress for the next couple of days to avoid repeat meltdowns. And number 4, worth repeating, don't beat yourself up. You are perfect, you didn't cause this, and I think you're great. I hope you found this video about meltdowns helpful. If you have, I'd really appreciate you clicking the like button. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I make videos every week about autism and disability and our lives. Feel free to subscribe to enjoy more of my content. And finally, thank you to the purple people who support this channel in a variety of ways. If you'd like to become a purple person, click the join button on my channel to find out more. Bye bye!